Thank you so much for both of you for being here. And I'm not sure if am I asking like one person in particular, or can I leave it open to both?
You do whatever you want.
All right, so this is for both of you. But do you have any type of growth strategy for your leadership skills? Or conversely, have you had any particular experiences that you felt really grew you as a leader? And to give context, like leadership is something I value very highly, and I'm doing lots of things that I think are helping to develop my leadership skills, but I'm wondering if you guys have anything that you actively participate in or do that you've noticed has really helped you grow as a leader.
Outside of the Talent Champions Council, that doesn't count.
Yeah, I think it's really, I read a ton, and I'm constantly reading about different leadership styles. And I think probably the thing that I maybe do a little bit differently is that I don't necessarily look within my own industry. I think oftentimes you think automatically that you need to look around at, food and beverage, right? I mean, to Scott's point, I mean, joining something like the Talent Council or areas where, you feel like you're going to get the most growth, oftentimes even where there's different styles of leadership too. I think that's where you're going to find where you can kind of pick and choose out of different groups. And so I think that is, I think that's been the most important thing for me. And I think today there's just so many options to be able to find those conversations going on too. Scott, you mentioned you're doing a clubhouse. I mean, obviously that's kind of the hottest thing going on right now, where you get to hear people talk about different styles as well. But I do think that leadership changes. And I think, as I just mentioned, things like a pandemic, I think, changes people's leadership styles. And yep. I think certainly mine, I think, was changed slightly. The sort of core is still there, but I think it's just to look around and constantly be open to a bit of change when needed.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Love the question. And I think piggybacking off of what Kara just said, leadership is really fluid. I think for me, I can always know that I'm grounded in who I am and the way I lead, and that's not going to change my fundamentals and how I put people first and where I come from and how I see people. But I think, the pandemic, the murder of George Floyd and Black Lives Matter. I mean, I don't think there had ever been a time in my life where I had been a leader that I had been thrown into a little bit of an emotional tailspin, quite frankly, when I was dealing with so much emotion coming at me and questions and honest questions. Like, what are you going to do about it? What are our numbers? What are you going to do about it? And, I didn't necessarily have all of those answers on my fingertip. And similarly to when we sent people home in March 11th or so last year, we were in triage mode. And I feel like so much of last year was triage. I was just triaging in order to just get to like a point in time when I and the organization could just kind of start to adapt to the changes that had just happened so that we could sustain and transform. And so being aware of that was very strange. If you're ever kind of like are doing something, but you can almost see what you're doing from a different vantage point. Mm-hmm. For me, that's something that definitely was happening while I was leading through this very difficult time. And it was just like, one avalanche over another avalanche over another avalanche, and letting people go. And we weren't able to do raises, and that communication. And why would those, you can only imagine 1,000 people with 1,000 questions, which is totally, totally cool. But I didn't have all of the answers. So leaning on other leaders was really important. I always say, take the gift and leave the rest. That's something that stays with me always, because there's so much for me to learn. And I know what is out there that, oh yeah, that's different, or he or she is doing that differently. Let me take that and let me translate it into Claude or Vayner and provide that to the core. The other thing that I always stay very close to my roots in hospitality. And so I always say that, everything I learned was from waiting tables and bartending. And I truly believe that. So Setting the Table is a book that is always near and dear to me, Danny Meyer's book, because it talks about hospitality and customer service and always putting people first. And that's really empathy, again, going back to that. So I use a lot of different things. I mean, I read Tara Brach quite a bit. I like Buddhist psychology because it grounds me. So there's a lot of, little tools in my toolkit here, but fundamentally, staying grounded, taking the gift and leaving the rest, and making sure like my eyes are open in terms of what's happening. And if I can predict what's about to come.
I love it.